Now, Rishi Sunak became the last man standing in this Conservative leadership contest just before 2 p.m. today, when his last rival, Penny Mordaunt, announced that she was dropping out. Moments later, Mr Sunak was confirmed as a new Conservative leader. Tomorrow morning, he will formally take over as Prime Minister after seeing King Charles at Buckingham Palace. He'll face some formidable challenges, not least the cost of living crisis, energy prices, and winning back the confidence of the markets. Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, is with me. Gary.
Just because Rishi Sunak's been elected unopposed does not mean there is harmony around the Conservative Party. A lot of his opponents are muttering that the grandees fixed the rules to try and ensure exactly this kind of outcome. There are ex-Boris supporters who were weeping that their man let them down by pulling out. They feel, some of them are saying, as though he just led them a merry dance up the hill, never had any intention of going for the job, was just trying to increase his profile. There are Penny Mordaunt supporters who wish she'd pulled out earlier. There is grief all around the place. And there is a great question over whether, although everybody, it seems, is using the word unity in the Tory party tonight, whether this is a party that can relearn unity. You only need to look a short way down the track to see all sorts of issues that are going to come up on spending, for instance, where that will put enormous tension. Spending cuts that Rishi Sunak will have in his sights will put enormous tension on the Tory party. And today we had the European Research Group, the pro-Brexit figures considered on the right of the party, laying down their laws about how they see the Northern Ireland Protocol, and Brexit itself should be continued. One final point, though, is if you look at the numbers of nominations that each of the candidates are claiming they had, it's very striking. They don't add up. Who'd have thought it? There are actually, by my calculation, about 32 more MPs claimed by the candidates when they put forward, when they claim how many nominees they had, than there are Conservative MPs. Who'd have thought it? These numbers, some of them maybe a little specious. Another bizarre twist in our bizarre political times. Rishi Sunak, welcomed by MPs at party headquarters, told Conservatives they must unite behind his painful policies or die. After a 7-week government led by Liz Truss who promised tax cuts without pain, Mr Sunak says the party will have to raise taxes and cut spending, and any softening of those policies risks feeding market nerves and raising the cost of borrowing. Inside the headquarters, the man sometimes accused of being over-polished gave a first rather wooden public address as Prime Minister.
I'd like to pay tribute to Liz Truss for her dedicated public service to the country. The United Kingdom is a great country, but there is no doubt we face a profound economic challenge. We now need stability and unity, and I will make it my utmost priority to bring our party and our country together, because that is the only way we will overcome the challenges we face and build a better, more prosperous future for our children and our grandchildren. I pledge that I will serve you with integrity and humility, and I will work day in, day out to deliver for the British people.
Even the incoming Prime Minister seemed surprised by how short it was, under 90 seconds. Wow. Rishi Sunak will speak again tomorrow in front of number 10, after he formally takes office at a meeting with the King in Buckingham Palace.
Liz, we have to be honest. We have to be honest. But borrowing your way out of inflation isn't a plan, it's a fairy tale.
After the long summer campaign of hustings and TV debates that he lost, this succession was contested over 4 short days with not a word of policy uttered by him in public. But Rishi Sunak is expected to stick with Jeremy Hunt as Chancellor and his tax rises, plus a programme of spending cuts.
Delighted. Oh my goodness, you're really happy. Cock-a-hoop. You're cock-a-hoop?
Just absolutely delighted. It's worth noting that I think the pound has strengthened and our long-term borrowing costs have fallen on the result, so very positive.
Absolutely. The last government, the Truss Kwarteng government, let it be known that they thought restraint of borrowing was all unnecessary, the old orthodoxy, abacus economics, and it frightened the markets. They learnt that markets really are a constraint. And so I think it's perfectly sensible now to turn to someone who has some credibility.
Boris Johnson's withdrawal from the contest last night seemed to cheer the markets. It left only Penny Mordaunt as a possible challenger. But it left Boris Johnson's supporters wondering if he'd ever been committed to running. You feel a bit betrayed?
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing to say, Gary.
What was he up
There is
to?
a sense of betrayal.
What was he doing?
Well, you've got to ask him that, not me. I guess what it was that he felt he couldn't pull the parliamentary party together. I do think, maybe he could have worked that one out, some days in advance.
He wasn't just boosting his share price, was he? And you had a walk-on part in that.
That's an interesting idea. Well, his share price is pretty high at the moment, but not in the House of Commons, more on the lecture side.
We can't hide the fact you did come out for Boris Johnson quite late in the day. He pulled stumps, said he wasn't going to. Do you feel played?
Look, I'm not going to waste time or emotion looking at what's just happened. I am going to focus.
You could say categorically you don't, but it's interesting you don't say that.
I don't waste time or energy on things in the past.
Throughout the morning, Penny Mordaunt struggled to get the 100 nominations required to enter the contest. Some of her own supporters pleaded with her to throw in the towel. It's a pretty odd situation, isn't it, where some of the biggest backers of a candidate are pleading with them to stop extending what is you see as a painful process for the country.
I think we just have to recognise the urgency of the economic situation. We're not in a...
Why couldn't Penny Mordaunt recognise that on her own? Why did you have to tell her?
Well, I think she has recognised it on her own.
The news of Penny Mordaunt's failed bid pinged into Tory MPs' phones as they gathered to hear their backbench chairman announce who had got enough nominations to contest the leadership.
As returning officer in the leadership election, I can confirm that we have received one valid nomination.
Polling suggests the public know all about Rishi Sunak's enormous personal wealth and something of the controversies over his wife's non-dom status.
I remember we all sat braced waiting for the Chancellor's announcement.
As Chancellor, his branding was everywhere, not least on the rollout of furlough during COVID. At 11 Downing Street, he proudly proclaimed his Hindu faith. This year, he can put down Diwali candles outside number 10 tomorrow. Rishi Sunak, the youngest Prime Minister of modern times, has the toughest of inheritances, but it's one he predicted, having spent the summer saying Liz Truss's economic experiment would boost the cost of borrowing. It now falls to him to ease those pressures, pull back Tory poll ratings, unite a party that is deeply divided and ridiculed around the world.
Well, a short time ago, I spoke to the Culture Secretary, Michelle Donovan. I put it to her that there are many people across the country who question whether, given the chaos of the last few months, the Conservative Party has the moral right to install yet another unelected Prime Minister.
Look, nobody wanted any of that, as you describe. What is important now is we look ahead and we focus on, as I said, delivering on the people's priorities, delivering on that manifesto, and getting people through this tough winter. We've now selected somebody who has a proven track record when it comes to the economy. Look at the millions of jobs that he helped save during COVID. This is a man that is going to steer the ship with all wings of the Conservative Party. He's held over 2/3 of the parliamentary party are backing him. I think we should be looking forward now as we deliver.
But these are the same arguments that he came up with in the summer. The first time round he ran for the leadership, and it didn't work with the Tory party members. So who was wrong?
I think we can always look back, and nobody had a crystal ball at the time, but I myself am a type of politician that likes to look forward. Examining who did what when and why they did it, etc., is going to help put food on the table of my constituents.
Indeed, but why did he not convince the members in the summer? What was lacking there?
Well, it was a bit of a different scenario then, and the challenges that we're now facing from the economy, etc. But we can't rewrite history. What we can do is look forward and say, actually, look, this is somebody that's commanded the unity of the Conservative Party. Over 2/3 of members of Parliament, from Priti Patel and Ian Duncan-Smith coming out to support him, to Tom Tugendhat, to Richard Graham. That is the full breadth of the party as they're backing him. and preparing him to then go forth and deliver for our nation and deliver on a unity ticket.
But the ERG, the European Research Group, which has been a thorn in many a Tory Prime Minister's side and has helped to bring them down, you know, they weren't entirely decided this morning after their huddle whether to support him or not. Is there not the danger that you've got, you know, 60 supporters of Boris Johnson, perhaps more, who can always say, we don't like what we see and we're going to bring this guy down?
Well, look, a great proportion of those 60 supporters have actually come over to Rishi Sunak and publicly endorsed him and said that he has their full support. So I don't think that's true. And I know what the...
you hope it's not true.
Well, it's not true. But I know what some commentators might want to do. They might want to whip that up and keep talking about it as though it's a thing. It's not a thing. This is a united party that has a focus. Rishi Sunak is somebody that will be relentlessly focused on delivery, making sure that we are united to achieve that, that we provide stability and confidence back into our economy, and we get on with that manifesto.
We've heard very little from him in recent days and weeks, when you might expect someone who's very high profile in the summer to say what he thinks about the current situation. And we know him as Chancellor, but we don't know much else about him. What kind of Prime Minister will he be?
Well, I'm not sure that's true. We had a 6-week campaign, didn't we, over the summer, where we heard a great deal about him. It was probably one of the longest job interviews anybody's ever had.
But it was aimed at the Tory party membership. He wasn't talking to the
Well, it
entire
was all over the media, wasn't it? You know, all of those hustings were broadcast. We heard all about him. We heard about his upbringing. We heard about his values. We heard about his economic plans. We heard about his political priorities. And we learnt more about him as a family man.
Right. And what kind of Prime Minister can we thus expect?
Well, I think we can expect, as I said, somebody that is going to be focused on creating that unity, focused on delivery, focused on providing that stability and economic confidence back to our country, and somebody that is determined to make good on that manifesto because he believes in acting on and following through on the promises that we made to the general public.
And finally, the average lead for the Labour Party versus the Tories, I think, is about 30 points at the moment. I mean, that would be an extinction event for you if the election took place now, which it most probably won't. But are you confident that with him at the helm, you have even a fighting chance of winning the next election?
Absolutely, but our priority is not on the election. Our priority is on improving people's lives, helping them get through this challenging time, making good on that manifesto. Governments are not just in to get re-elected, they're in to do a good job. And that's one of the reasons I selected and supported Rishi Sunak, because I genuinely believe he is going to do a good job for our country.
And is the main point of him getting this job that he appeases the markets, which otherwise might have been very wobbly indeed?
No, I think the main point of him getting this job is because we need a strong leader. He is the person that can unite the party. Yes, does he have a track record when it comes to the economy? Absolutely. Do we need that at this time? Yes. But also he has a strong experience in a breadth of other roles, and he can bring that to the table.
Mr Dolan, thank you very much
Thank
indeed.
you.
Well, I've also been speaking to the former Conservative leader, Sir Ian Duncan Smith. I asked him first whether he thought that Rishi Sunak's main asset was that he would satisfy the markets.
It's an asset. I think all in all, what we need is to have somebody that has a clear idea of where they go. There isn't that much difference between him and Liz and even Boris in some sense of what they want to try and do. The question is, how do you do it whilst at the same time making sure you don't cause turbulence and chaos around you? And in that sense, that's where he scores in this regard, because I think the markets are prepared to give him greater leeway because of his being Chancellor and because of him saying that he wants, first of all, to stabilise things before going for growth.
But being Prime Minister is about so much more than just satisfying the markets, isn't it?
Oh, no, completely. But it's one of the building blocks that he's got to do, is to make sure that the markets, and after all, we tend to look at the UK only. All around the world, Japan's got a run on the pound, the currency's at the 35 low, you've got China in problems. You know, right now, France, President Macron's people talking about him disappearing. All of this is because it's a global crisis. So what he's got to do is not make us a standout in that crisis so that they can target the UK, which they've been doing, but they've also moved on to other countries. So my point is, that record will help him stabilise that view of who the UK is.
One of your biggest donors, Guy Hands, said this morning on the radio that we are now on course, even with him in charge, to become the sick man of Europe.
I've heard those predictions before, and they're normally wrong. All predictions at the end of the day are based on the person's existing view. I mean, I think he lives in the Channel Islands as a tax exile, so if he wants to come and help, maybe he should come back and pay tax while he's at it.
How historic is it for you and your party members that you've got the first Hindu leader of the Tory party?
Well, it's intriguing that the Conservative Party in government has had a female Prime Minister first. It's now got the first Hindu person of colour elected as the Prime Minister here. We had the first Chancellor, first person of colour elected to be the Chancellor in the last round. You know, I think, and I look at Labour and I say, for all their talk, they still have never elected a woman to be their leader. So I think we are showing we're much more open to diversity. When people come here, they can be anything they want to be on dint of their capability and skills.
But had this vote gone to the leadership, to the membership rather like in the summer, do you think that some members, many members perhaps, might have not voted for him on the basis of his ethnicity?
Do you know, I don't find that in the membership of the Conservative Party. You may have said once upon a time, way back, that was the case. Right now, they are genuinely colourblind in terms of who's there. They've got members of associations in almost every part of the country of all different ethnic backgrounds, some of colour, some of none, women, men. It's quite peculiar. When you go there, you realise the big shift and change has happened to the Conservative Party at large, as much as it's happened back here in Parliament.
Has the Tory party now exorcised the spirit of Boris Johnson, which has been, you know, to which the party has been enthralled for the last 6 years?
Well, I would never say we've exercised the spirit of Boris Johnson, because it will still be around and he will still be around.
Do you think he'll make a comeback at some stage?
I will never say never to anything that Boris does, or for that matter, predict anything. But what I will say is we've made a decision. We have a leader. This leader is, I believe, the kind of leader we need for this particular set of circumstances, and he will govern us and take us through to the next election.
Can this leader rely on your support, on the support of, you know, hardened Brexiteers in the party? I know he's one of them, but still, there are indications that, you know, some people might go wobbly on him.
There'll always be one or two people that get a bit upset and fussed. I mean, we all have our issues. I'm sanctioned by the Chinese government, so I'm very keen for us to recognise the threat of China. But we make those arguments and try and keep them reasonable at the same time and get the government to make sure they reflect that. But you can't be 100% right on everything, so you have to give them, on all the key areas, your biggest support.
One more very briefly. I've spoken to your colleagues, many of whom represent so-called red wall seats in the north. They have told me on camera that if Rishi Sunak is your party leader, they have no hope of getting re-elected at the next election.
You shouldn't be so pessimistic.
So Ian Duncan-Smith talking to me earlier. Let's go to Aisha in Leeds. Aisha.
Thanks, Matt. Well, Rishi Sunak will have to win back the trust of voters growing weary by so many months of Conservative infighting and disarray. So we've been to some key constituencies to find out what message they're sending to the new PM. In a moment, we'll be with Amelia Jen in Winchester, one of the southern seats where the Conservatives are fighting a potential Lib Dem resurgence. But first, Jane Dodge is in Worksop in Bassett Law, a so-called red wall seat, which saw the biggest swing from Labour to Tory in 2019. Jane, what are they thinking now?
Well, the Prime Minister might be talking about stability and unity, but here in Worksop, in Bassett Law, the jury is still really firmly out on Rishi Sunak. I mean, this constituency turned blue back in 2019 after 84 years of Labour, in main part because of Boris Johnson and the promise of levelling up. Local party activists, as recently as this weekend, were knocking on doors, and they told me to the chorus of "Bring back Boris." News that late last night that he was standing down from this contest really left many of them virtually speechless and angry. And local party members, including councillors, really feel they should have had a vote in this process. And they say that if this constituency is to remain blue, Rishi Sunak has to deliver on levelling up. But what are the chances of that when the Prime Minister's priority is likely to be balancing the books?
First you see him, then you don't. Boris Johnson surprised even his closest supporters in Bassett Law by pulling out of the leadership race at the 11th hour.
Howdy, folks, and welcome aboard the Rocky Mountain Railroad.
But the recent political roller coaster only ground to a halt when Penny Mordaunt pulled out too. In a constituency that turned blue for the first time in 84 years under Mr Johnson, there was a real sense of loss for Shelley and her daughter Beth, who are visiting Sundown Adventureland today.
I think he's been given a rough time, and I think had any of them got had the place as Prime Minister with COVID, that none of them had done a good enough job. I don't think anybody could have done.
I voted for Boris when he became Prime Minister. To be honest, it's the first time I've ever voted. But, you know, I will think about it going forward, seeing
Do you think
who I'm
you'll
gonna
vote Conservative again at the next general election?
I don't know. I'm undecided.
And it's that sense of uncertainty that Red Wall MPs now worry could derail the government at the next election. Many of them had been banking on Boris. Bassettlaw's MP, Brendan Clark-Smith, was one of those who'd nailed his colours to the mast. Now he's calling for party unity. But that's not going to happen as far as Michael Carruthers is concerned. He's been a party member for 38 years and he's angry he didn't get to vote in the leadership election this time round.
Bassettlaw and Rishi Sunak, I don't think are going to see eye to eye, is the best answer I can give you.
What do you mean?
Rishi Sunak is not a man of what I would call people. He comes from an affluent background. He has more than sufficient funds to maintain a very good lifestyle for himself.
Why was Boris Johnson different?
Boris was a down-to-earth man. You know, he was full of bluster and hot air and all the rest of it, but people could associate with him.
So what are the chances of unity?
Very little.
It's rising energy costs that are proving to be the heavy lifting for businesses across the UK. At this gym in Retford, bills have gone up by 100% since March. The owner now wants some longer-term support from Rishi Sunak.
I really need to see someone come into it with a better solution to the energy costs and to help me with a longer-term plan past March with reference to the rateable value.
Do you accept tax rises are inevitable?
Yes.
What's that going to mean for you?
Hardship. Yeah, hardship. I'm currently on a lower paid salary. I've been running this business for 8 years, I own it, and to see my business disappear down the drain after 8 years is quite difficult.
Come to pay your taxes, have you?
Fairy tales are out. At least that's what Rishi Sunak said in his first leadership bid. Keen to balance the books, tax rises and spending cuts may now be on the agenda, something Beth is dreading.
Do you think taxes are likely to go up, though?
Yeah, most likely.
And what will that mean to you?
Deciding whether to put petrol in the car or feed my daughter.
Is it as bad as that?
It can be. It has been. There's been points where I've had to ask for help. And, I mean, I'm in my 30s now. I never thought I'd be in this position, and it's looking less and less likely that I'm ever going to have a mortgage or a place of my own.
The leadership battle might be over for now, but there's no end in sight for the fight for many to make ends meet.
Jane reporting there. Well, with me now are James Mason, who is Chief Executive of the West and North Yorkshire Chamber of Commerce, and Simi Sekon, a local business owner who's also a member of Conservative Friends of India. Simi, I'll start with you. We've just heard in Jane's report Conservative members who were unhappy that they didn't kind of get to ratify or get a vote. You're a Conservative member. How are you feeling right now?
Well, firstly, I think the Conservative members have already had an opportunity to vote, and by default, he was the next natural choice, and Rishi Sunak was the next natural choice anyway. So I think it's wrong to say they haven't had an opportunity to vote. We have had an opportunity to vote, and we voted for him as the default position. And can I just say that the party will now be united under Rishi Sunak, and I think that all members are very pleased, and they will be, and they'll all be singing great praises in a very short period of time.
Well, we heard members in Jane's piece there saying, bring back Boris, so not all of them are going to be singing from the same hymn sheet, are they?
I think those very same people will be united behind Rishi Sunak very shortly, and I think only time will tell, but I think I will be right. Within 7 to 14 days, I think you'll find that everyone will be united behind Rishi Sunak.
OK, and James, what's your reaction to this of Rishi Sunak's leadership win? What is business's reaction in this area?
I think Mr Sunak today quite rightly said we need a period of stability and unity. So I think businesses now do need that stability. They need some certainty. They need some confidence. The markets have reacted well, which is good news. But I think Mr Sunak's in for a tough time over the next few weeks, a big economic statement on Monday. And I think what businesses really need now is going into 2023, some certainty, certainly on energy costs, a longer-term view. Inflation is spiralling out of control. So businesses now that are closing need to know that they can probably continue in good faith, that Mr Sunak can probably wrestle the best of this really bad situation.
Basically, what you're saying is boring politics for now. You want Westminster to become quite sleepy. That would make it easier for members, wouldn't it?
We don't necessarily want Westminster ever to be sleepy. We've got a real challenge both across the UK but across the world. So a period of mundaneness would help. A period of parity, yes. So looking into the future, knowing that we can commit. But I wouldn't ever say sleepiness. We need to get active now. We really need to battle this.
And Simi, as a business owner as well, what would you like to see from Rishi Sunak? Markets have reacted positively, but there's still these really difficult economic challenges that he faces, possibly the worst that Prime Minister might have faced. So what do you expect him to be able to do?
Well, firstly, I'd like to say that Rishi Sunak, being a member of the economic markets, being a member who has worked in the city, who understands financial, he's the best man for the job. I don't think there is anybody else that could actually rival what he can offer. He's seen the history of the economy, he knows where we are today, and he's the best man to channel us through this turbulent, this turbulent period. As James has said quite correctly, businesses in Yorkshire want to see northern issues and levelling up being put into place. As his constituency is in Yorkshire, he does understand northern people, and he's also somebody that listens to people. He doesn't need to be a person that sat there milking cows at 3 a.m. He wants to understand the circumstances, he wants to understand the issues and deliver.
Well, some of those issues that he might have to face in balancing the books are higher taxes and possibly cuts as well. Are you still going to support him if that comes on the way?
Can I just say this? I'm a businessman and I'm a realist. Can I just say this? We need to pay for what we've already consumed, and we cannot leave this a bad legacy for our grandchildren. If we have to pay an extra penny or 2 penny, my business would support that, and I am fully in favour of supporting that issue.
James, higher taxes, is that what businesses in North want? Is that what people are hoping for with Rishi Sunak?
Not necessarily, of course. There's always two sides to the coin there. And as Simi mentioned, if people can afford to pay tax, then they should be charged on that. But equally, what the North wants is some genuine levelling up from a Northern Prime Minister to be a Northern MP. We met with Rishi as a conglomerate of business people from Bradford and West Yorkshire a few weeks ago. Northern Powerhouse Rail, that leg would be useful. And actually giving the North and West Yorkshire and North Yorkshire the power to power itself as well and support the UK-wide PLC as well.
How likely do you think that is when there are going to be decisions that have to be made about levelling up, and whether that's going to be sustainable or achievable in the next year or so with all of the pressures that the UK faces?
Well, Rishi Sunak is probably best placed after 2 or 3 years of really unprecedented cuts and then really going again with supporting businesses. What we must do is retain businesses. We must keep people in jobs. That's the really key, important point here. And I think Simi will sympathise here. People on benefits, people mortgage defaulting, people going to the wall, etc. does not help. We've got to power on through this. So retention and supporting businesses and individuals through this really difficult next year, 18 months, 2 years is exactly what's needed. It's the only way out.
And Simi, just finally to you, lots of people commenting today about Rishi Sunak being the first British Asian. I mean, what does that mean? What significance does that have?
OK. Well, look, firstly, I'm sure that Indians all over the world are celebrating. Today is a special day. We have Bandi Chhor for the Sikhs and Diwali celebrated by all Indians. But this is not a game show. This is Prime Minister politics. This is an organisation, the largest organisation in Britain. We must ensure that we have the correct person, the right person in power. Race is secondary. Politics for Britain is first.
OK, Simi Sekon and James Mason, thank you very much for joining us in the studio. Now, Rishi Sunak may have grown up in his parents' pharmacy in Southampton, but Winchester College became the grand backdrop to the future PM's journey through the ranks of Britain's privileged classes. Today, the Winchester constituency is Conservative, but there was a high Remain vote among Tory supporters. Now, the Lib Dems have it firmly in their sights in the next general election. So is Rishi the man to keep Winchester blue? Amelia Jen is there. Amelia.
Well, as you say, the Lib Dems are quite literally banking on winning seats like this one. They've set up a fund to target blue wall seats, and they say they can even count former Tory donors in their number. It's undeniable they're polling well. In seats like this one, they'd win if there was an election held tomorrow. But a YouGov poll that just came out said that Sir Keir Starmer was actually more popular than Rishi Sunak in 80% of these blue wall seats. We spoke to lots of Labour voters today, almost all of them telling us they wouldn't hesitate to vote Lib Dem just to get the Conservatives out. And even a lot of the Conservative voters that we spoke to had grown very weary of the chaos. Rishi Sunak is undeniably more popular here than Boris Johnson and than Liz Truss, but he still has an uphill task. It's back to the future for Tory voters in Hursley Village. Boris Johnson's one-time Chancellor turned nemesis, finally taking the top job. Shopkeeper and Conservative Party member David hopes that this is the last he'll hear of it.
Do you think that your party will ever recover from what has happened over the past few weeks?
That's a really difficult question to answer. I don't know. I think so, yes, because I think there's plenty of time. It all depends on the unity of the party.
Do you have hope that Rishi Sunak will be able to pull things back?
I do.
So too, the manager at the local pub.
I think it's great. I think he'll be able to sort out the country's finances, and that's where we need to go, especially like a business like my own. With the times that are coming, we need support, and I believe Rishi will be able to do that.
You're a Conservative voter. You have been always.
All my life, yes.
What would you do next time round?
I have no idea. I think what we need to do is get somebody who's got a bit of oomph and sensibleness to try and put things right, and then have a general election when we know what we're voting for.
Do you think Rishi Sunak has the oomph to do it?
I don't know. I really don't know, but I'm prepared to give him the opportunity.
This seat is in the crosshairs of the Lib Dem party machine. They already run Winchester City Council and were fewer than 1,000 votes behind the Tories in the 2019 general election. This is the blue wall, and they're banking on crashing through it the next time round.
This is definitely within grasp. We need 500 people to switch their vote from Conservative to Lib Dem to win this. And we've seen over the last year or so, the number of historic by-elections that have been won: Tiverton and Honiton, Chesham and Amersham, North Shropshire by the Liberal Democrats. And yeah, we're going to win this.
At the local library's Scrabble Club, this is a game of the lesser of evils.
If we have to have this lot in, I'd rather have Rishi than anyone else, because I do think he's very talented and very bright.
What about you?
I just think
you shaking your head there.
it's going to be more of the same. We're just going to go down the same old road, same jaded policies.
What do you make of the Lib Dems? Would you be more inclined to vote them than Rishi Sunak?
Probably, yeah, just to get Sunak's chances out.
Recent polls show the Tories are on for a loss, but today's result spells relief for the sitting MP, who's banking on Mr Sunak being a more palatable option, at least, than his predecessors.
People in Winchester want stability. They want somebody in charge of the country that they can believe in. They want somebody who makes them proud of their country, somebody who thinks before they speak. Dare I say that might not have been the case with the last couple of prime ministers who they didn't like so much. I think they're going to like Rishi very much. He's a local boy, and he's also one of the nicest people I know.
It was here that Rishi Sunak went to boarding school at the exclusive Winchester College. It's seats like these, Southern, Remain voting, traditionally affluent, that he's now in danger of losing.